Yeah, that's right. Now, we're going to talk to Naeem Aslam from Avatrade about this in a moment. But first of all, let me just tell you that the Greek Prime Minister, Alexis Tsipras, is going to Brussels today. He's going to be meeting with the European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker. And they're set to hold a conference call with François Hollande and Angela Merkel. All of this, of course, to discuss the ongoing debate on Greece's economic reforms. Mr. Tsipras on Monday sent Greece's creditors what he's calling a realistic proposal for those reforms. Now, the creditors are said to have their own plan on the table, although the Prime Minister says that he's yet to receive it. The deal is needed to release the last 7.2 billion euros of Greece's bailout loans. The Commission is playing down expectations of today's meeting, saying they're not expecting a final deal today. Both sides, though, acutely aware that Greece needs to pay the IMF 300 million euros this Friday. One Syriza MP saying they won't make that payment unless a deal is done. Well, let's turn to Naeem Aslam, who's the Chief Market Analyst at Avatrade. Thanks for being with us in studio.
Thanks for having me.
Let's talk about Greece. These debt talks have been going on now for months. Are the markets expecting another Greek cliffhanger?
I think I'm still very leery when it comes to Greece and the situation, because one thing is for certain: Greece is running out of options, time, and excuses. Now, this is the final choice, whether they're going to take this deal or whether they're not. The bank deposits are literally bleeding. And this is one of the reasons that yesterday we've seen a headline that the ECB has actually increased their ELA by another 500 million. Now,
that's emergency funding to the banks.
Absolutely. Now, I'm not too much worried when it comes to the IMF payment, and I've said that in various different reports. What I'm really worried about is the July 20th deadline, because that is the payment for the ECB. This is the payment for IMF, and IMF has shown very elastic approach when it comes to Greece. But whether ECB will do that, that is a completely different question. Because, Stephen, what really is important, who is holding the bloodline? It is the ECB. It's not really the IMF, because the ELAs are actually by ECB.
So they're holding up the banks, is what you're saying, with that emergency funding?
Absolutely. Now, the 7.2 billion deal that you are saying, if that is approved, then that means that the 3.5 billion, which they need to pay in July, that will also be possible. So I think it is very important, because they have lost enormous amount of time, and that has taken a massive toll on the market itself.
OK, well, I suppose if you're worried, we're worried, so we're all looking forward to July. But let's look a little bit later today to another meeting that's taking place, and that's the European Central Bank. We've seen already this sort of upturn in the Eurozone economy since the European Central Bank started pumping more money into the Eurozone. Just today, Eurozone employment, the latest measure, that's gone down. Another good news for European governments. Should we be thanking Mario Draghi for all of this?
I think we should be thanking to the bomb which has smoothed all the fears in the market, and that's the ECB QE quantitative easing. Yes, I think that the major questions what Mr. Draghi is going to be facing in the conference today. Number one, we need to hear something about the bond yields, because as you remember, going back a few weeks, we had a massive rout in the bond yields. And Draghi hasn't said anything very clear about this, that, okay, how's that going to react? Because ECB QE has actually, as you said, it has triggered growth in the Eurozone. And this was one of the reasons, along with many other reasons, such as repositioning and the lack of liquidity in the bond market, which actually started everything. But the primary element, or the denominator, remains the ECB QE, which has produced growth in the Eurozone, and then we had the bond yields going up.
And of course, oil price is another big factor, though, in helping those things along.
Absolutely. You see, the thing is, if you look at the core part of the inflation, you see that the elements of oil which are stripped away, right? So, but if the front end of that curve is steep, that really means that, okay, the oil price has gone way up, and then it is making less impact on the ECB QE, which is very important. So I think what we need to hear is, number one, is the inflation, because ECB has said, okay, their forecast is 0% for the third quarter of this year, but it has already gone up to 0.3%. They need to upgrade their forecast. Secondly, we think that the QE program is going to stay as it is, so they will not be making any changes. However, an important element is that they said they are going to do seasonal adjustment. This is one of the important elements that they've been talking about. But if you look at the payments that the purchases that they've done in April and March, they haven't actually gone up that much. So that means that this is the month where they can front load everything, and that could take a toll on the euro.
So we'll have to see how that plays out. Okay, Naeem Aslam from AvaTrade, thank you for joining us on
Thanks,
that. Let's take a look at what that market figures are doing today in trading. European markets, as Naeem was telling us, not too upset about Greece. We're seeing European markets trading just slightly up at this point in the trading day. You can see Paris' CAC 40 up 0.7% there, but no great excitement around on the markets. Jeannie.
Stephen, just to wrap up, we know there's no such thing as a free lunch, but you found something about perhaps the most expensive lunch that's out there.
Yeah, that's right. This is people bidding for the chance to have lunch with the billionaire investor Warren Buffett. He does this every year. It's a charity event. Bids start at $25,000, but I can tell you that this year's bids on the eBay website are now at over 1.2 million. He set a record in 2012 for this charity auction at almost $3.5 million. We'll have to see how high it goes this time. Mr. Buffett apparently willing to answer any question except what he plans to invest in next. So the winner gets to take themselves and 7 friends to lunch in Smith & Wollensky's restaurant in New York, Steakhouse, and all the proceeds go to the San Francisco-based charity Glide.
And I hope they're eating everything covered with gold.
So do I. And the best wine possible.
Thank you so much for that, Stephen Carroll, and that look at the business news.